But I do want to tie back to the little political thing you were just talking about. I mean, growing up, like you said, it was a really tough time, especially for the LGBTQ community.
Still is.
Exactly. So now I know a lot of people have been like, why now? Why now? Why now with this book? And I want to ask the same thing. Why do you think it's so important? And kind of like what reflections are you seeing between the time that you explain in this book that created so much fear for your parents raising a gay son to now, you know, people having to live that truth in this political climate?
I think a really good example of this is The 13th on Netflix by Ava DuVernay. And you see like how the racism that caused slavery still exists, and it's only like shifted and repurposed itself into like what we see now as the mass incarceration, you know, system. So the homophobia that, you know, caused the inaction for HIV/AIDS to become the issue that it is now, because I really feel like if the American government would have treated this like the issue that it is and deserves, and back in the early 80s when this came up, I wonder if I would have even been able to have contracted it when I did, because when you look at how far prevention and treatment has come since people actually started giving a fuck, you can tell that we've really come far fast. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how far we could have come had we started in 1982, not 1992. So that is why it's so important, because those conditions are currently being created now. Vice President Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana, and he has been a continued really useful tool for the radical religious right to impose their religious beliefs on people's access to reproductive health care, to Planned Parenthood. And when we see that in 2013, Clark County, Indiana closed their only Planned Parenthood clinic that offered STI testing and screening, and then you immediately saw one of the largest HIV/AIDS outbreaks in American, like in the last 2 decades. Like, so, and that, like, and we see all the time that when in counties and in states where Planned Parenthoods are closed, when they're the only means of access to STI screening, that STI rates go up, and that new HIV infection rates can go up or continue to be not diagnosed. And I think another reason what really terrified me was when the Trump administration directed the Centers for Disease Control to not study, you know, 7 words, and one of those words was trans. And we know that HIV/AIDS disproportionately affects the trans community. And to make it so that the CDC can't allow our leading scientists to study the effects of HIV/AIDS on folks is really, we are in a dangerous time. And I think for me, I really like to equate things to 90s movies because 1, it makes me laugh, and 2, it makes me kind of see things in a different way. But if you remember the movie Dante's Peak with Pierce Brosnan, if you're too young to have seen it, it's a great classic. If you're seeing a nice person cuddle up, it's a great Sunday thing. It's about a small town in somewhere in the Northwest escaping an impending doom of a catastrophic volcanic explosion. And the governor doesn't want to let the mayor evacuate. Honey, there's an emergency. And Pierce Brosnan is like, you know, we're going to fucking go through this whole catastrophe and we're just sitting ducks. And he explains to the mayor, who's this fierce lady, who he ends up becoming like their love interest. I think this is the plot. I haven't seen the movie in like 13 years, but this is like what I take from it. Like, he says, you know, if you put a frog in boiling water, the frog will jump out. But if you put a frog in like lukewarm water and like turn the thing on, like the frog will just boil to death. And I really have a very strong sense that we are being slowly boiled in this climate of racism and xenophobia and homophobia and fear-mongering. And instead of us really doing our due diligence on, clicking on the article that says, in my case, I'm learning one thing with the news. I think Donald Trump has a point on this with the vilification of media. With this book and with everything that I've talked about, I have read the headline, "Devastating HIV Diagnosis," like 10,000 times. And with everything that I've talked about in this book, that is the thing that I get. I'm so sorry. I heard you were diagnosed with HIV. How are you doing? Are you okay? La, la, la. The stigmatization of HIV is so fucking real. I mean, I'm fine with my diagnosis. I've lived with it. I'm fine. I'm thriving. I've never been better, which I also say in this book. But people see a headline and they don't even do. The point is that our medical research has come so far that when you test me, I just got to explain to how to copy yesterday what undetectable equals untransmittable is. And that is what is interesting, not like a TV star's devastating diagnosis with HIV. Like, that was like one sentence in a book. And I think we really all have to do so much better. Like, when the headline says Trump administration is XYZ, click on the fucking article, read the entire thing, figure out who's voting on these issues, figure out the powers that are creating these issues to happen in the first place, and then talk about it, and then talk about it again. I've literally cussed my father out 300 days of 2016 to explain to him how it was so fucked up that having an HIV positive son, he could ever support Donald Trump. I was like, how could you look at me in the face and want me to see you on Christmas and vote for this person? How could you do that? And so I think in this day, it's like, but at least I'm willing to have the conversation. I don't like write him off. So we have to stop writing each other off, have really difficult conversations, and then have them again. And, we have to get away from this like headline culture, because none of our issues can be fixed if we keep reacting to headlines. We all have to have an understanding, a working understanding of how we got here. And to me, this book, like for me, it was really me trying to process like how I got here.